Claude Monet's Woodgatherers at the Edge of the Forest was painted when the artist was in his early 20s. This work predates the Impressionist method with which Monet is most often associated. However, Woodgatherers anticipates Impressionism in at least one key way. That is Monet's translation of the observation of light and shadow into his painting's composition. Woodgatherers, from Boston's Museum of Fine Arts, depicts a clearing in the Fontainebleau forest. At the left, two figures carry bundles of wood. Although the sky is bright blue, with scattered white clouds, the field is largely in shadow. A band of trees provides additional color. Woodgatherers is one of several landscape paintings created by Monet in the 1860s, which develops a critical self-awareness of the process by which a landscape becomes a painting. In the mid-1860s, Monet made several trips to the forest of Fontainebleau. Accompanied by Frederic Bazille, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, and Alfred Sisley. Monet was the leader of this group, who would later become the core of the Impressionist movement, because he was the most artistically mature and was already fully committed to painting directly in nature. These Fontainebleau paintings, such as Woodgatherers, were done in the outdoors, or en plein air. Being painted directly in front of the subject gave Monet's work an authenticity as a true record of his specific experience of the world. The art historical importance of Monet's landscapes from the 1860s is sometimes misunderstood as simply winning the acceptance for a sketch made in the outdoors as a substitute for the more finished painting done in the studio. Painting directly in nature was necessary for Monet's project of translating landscape into painting. In a painting, there is a relationship between the subject depicted and the visual means by which the subject is depicted. In Camille Corot's Hagar in the Wilderness, both the landscape and the composition were the artist's invention. By painting directly in nature, Monet depicted a landscape that was real rather than invented. Monet set before himself a task of critically examining the process by which the observation of nature became a painting. In Woodgatherers, Monet studied nature and found a point of view within the landscape that provided his painting's compositional structure. For example, there is a path that runs diagonally from the left edge towards the middle of the painting. If Monet had set up his easel further to the left or to the right, further back or further ahead, his view of this path would correspondingly change. The path's angle establishes that this painting was made from a specific place. Despite the brightness of the sky, the majority of the landscape is in shadow. This indicates that the painting was made at a particular time. Given the angle of the sun creating this shadow, we can estimate that the painting was done either in the morning or evening. If Monet had arrived on this scene a few minutes earlier or a few minutes later, this shadow would be different. In Woodgatherers, we view the landscape from a specific time and place. This specificity of time and place in Monet's paintings is significant. As he developed his method of plein air painting, Monet aimed to demonstrate how his perception of nature was not arbitrary. His subject was transitory, but his observation was methodical. Monet's Woodgatherers acknowledges the rules of perspective, which artists have employed since the Renaissance. This method of perspective depends on diagonal lines moving towards a vanishing point to translate the visual experience of the three-dimensional world onto a two-dimensional painting. Monet's method of articulating these lines of perspective is innovative. The path follows one line of perspective that moves back in pictorial space towards a vanishing point. At the right, Monet brazenly suggests a line of perspective out of the border between the light and the shadow. The shadow is ephemeral. However, Monet transforms this into a structural element of the painting. In Woodgatherers, we can see Monet paying careful attention to how the transitory effects of light inform his perception of nature. By painting the light rather than the landscape, Monet more directly placed himself, as well as the viewer, into nature. This would become central to his method of Impressionism. In Rue de la Beauval Honfleur, which is also at Boston's MFA, Monet employs light and shadow to compose his painting. Without the shadow, this picturesque street conforms itself so perfectly to the lines of perspective running towards a vanishing point that the painting almost seems mundane. The painting's composition is a basic X created by the meeting of the street and the sky. However, within this composition, the shadowed area suggests its own lines of perspective and its own vanishing point. It is as if the shadow was rebelling against the X structure of the painting. While the street is a fixed element, the shadow is fleeting. In a matter of minutes, this shadow will move. Like many of Monet's paintings in the decade before Impressionism, this work employs light and shadow to articulate the relationship between the order of compositional structure and the actual irregularity of nature. This painting's composition is further complicated by the fact that it has two vanishing points. Monet employs the sides of the street to suggest lines of perspective that meet at a vanishing point, which is strategically marked by the presence of a woman and child. Within this larger construction of perspectival space, Monet has indicated a second area with its own vanishing point. This is the area of the shadow. The edge of the street and the edge of the shadow form lines of perspective that converge at the point where the street turns to the left. In this painting, both the selection of the subject and the means by which the subject is depicted contribute to Monet's methodical experiment in how to translate the observation of nature into the compositional structure of a painting. Monet explores how the painting of a landscape is born out of the relationship between the actual appearance of the subject and the means by which the subject is depicted in art. Woodgatherers depicts a particular place that had a specific appearance. In his painting, Monet translated that three-dimensional place into a two-dimensional image. In works such as Woodgatherers, Monet selected particular subjects and developed methods of depicting those subjects that brought these issues to the forefront. Woodgatherers has a composition, but its composition is based on observation, not invention. The structure of Monet's landscape is a visualization of his observation of nature. Woodgatherers at the Edge of the Forest demonstrates why we shouldn't judge a painting only by its subject matter. This seemingly quaint painting is in fact structurally daring and conceptually innovative. The painting's composition is determined by Monet setting up his easel in a particular place and recording a particular fleeting moment. The painting is a record of Claude Monet's observation of that place and time. Impressionism would be an outgrowth of this method.